Call the Senate Select Committee to order.
There you go. All right. All right, are we all set for recording, everybody?
Yes.
All right, thank you, everybody. And thank you to all of you for attending this community input session regarding redistricting. Please be advised that this session is being video and audio recorded. The recording will subsequent to this meeting, be placed online. And as you can see on the screen to your left for most of you, and in the front of the room, this is what I expect you to see if you're on the General Court website where it is being live streamed. This is not a typical meeting of the House or Senate committee, and it's not being attended, so you know, by all members of the House committee. We have members of both the House and Senate with us here tonight, and I would like to defer to Senator Gray here from the Senate, and if the Senate could introduce themselves, that would be terrific.
I am Senator Gray. I am the chair of the Senate Select Committee on Redistricting.
Good evening. I am Senator Sharon Carson. I represent Senate District 14, which is Londonderry, Hudson, and Auburn. I am the chair of Senate Judiciary and Senate Executive Departments and Administration Committee.
I'm State Senator Donna Susi. I represent Senate District 18, comprised of 45 from 9 in Manchester and the town of Litchfield, and I'm here as a member of the redistricting.
Thank you, Senators. My name is...
We expect Senator Perkins Boca to arrive shortly, so instead of going and reintroducing her when she gets here,
Okay, thank you, Senator. We do have members of the House Special Committee on Redistricting with us. My name is Barbara Griffin. I'm a representative from Goffstown. I am chair of the Redistricting Committee in the House of Representatives, and I'm going to ask the representatives that are with us tonight from the committee to introduce themselves, and I'd like to start down there, way low, Representative Wilhelm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Matt Wilhelm. I'm the state representative for Hillsborough District 42, which covers Manchester, wards 1, 2, and 3.
I'm State Representative Ross Berry. I represent the southern half of Senator Susi's district, Manchester's wards 8, 9, and the town of Litchfield.
Hi, I'm Bob Lynn. I'm a representative from Wyndham, New Hampshire, Rockingham District 7.
Good evening, Len Turcott. I represent Stratford County District 4, town of Barrington. I'm a member of the Labor Committee, Finance Committee, this committee, and senior advisor in the House Majority Office.
Carolyn McGuire, representing Allenstown, Epsom, and Pittsfield. I'm the chair of the ED&A department on the redistricting committee, and I'm probably going to be taking the lead in redistricting the county of Merrimack for House seats.
I'm Paul Bergeron, representing Hillsborough 29, which is Nashua Ward 2, and I'm a member of the Election Law Committee.
I'm Marjorie Smith. I represent Durham and Madbury in the House. I serve on the Judiciary Committee in addition to the Special Committee on Redistricting.
Thank you, members, for introducing yourself and being with us all here tonight. Before we actually begin, I want to speak to the overall process that we're going through, particularly in the House, as that is the committee that I am chairing and sort of put this together. Information on the redistricting process for the House of Representatives can be found on the General Court website. And of course, some of you here I know that, but I know that this is being live streamed and it will be recorded and people will be looking at it at a later date. Once you get on the General Court website, you would click on the House of Representatives. That's the page I'm more familiar with. There is, of course, a Senate page. Once you're on the House of Representatives page, you would then go to the committee page, and you would want to go to standing committees. There are more committees than you can imagine in operating by the legislature here in Concord, and you want to go to the standing committee and then scroll down to the special committee on Redistricting. When you click on that, you're going to find a list of all the members. You're going to find some contact information. You're going to be able to email all the members of the Redistricting Commission by clicking on a link there. And there's also a link to the committee website. And that page, when you go to that page, it has additional information, particularly on redistricting. There is a link for meetings and minutes on that page, and that is the page where I expect the link for this meeting to ultimately appear. So we'll be working that out with IT. You will see Olivia Zink from Franklin, or I think you're from Franklin here tonight, right? And I've had a discussion about maps can be found on that page, and I'll be talking to IT about that. We sort of did some beta testing, and I'll make sure that there's something there that if people want to submit maps, you can upload it. So what are the maps for, and what are we doing here? I think all of you here know we're redistricting. Redistricting is a process that goes on every 10 years. It's done after the federal census, and that population data is used to create districts for all level of government in regards to the representation. Here in New Hampshire, the Constitution says that the responsibility for the creation of those districts is that of the legislature, which is why you're members of your Senate and your House are here before you. The districts that we will be redrawing in New Hampshire are the Congressional district, the Executive Council seats, the State Senate seats, and the State Representative seats. There's also redistricting for county commissioner districts and delegates to the state party convention. I know that most of you have got one of the handouts that we brought here tonight. That information provides you with more detail on Merrimack County. That is the county we are in tonight. You'll find a sheet with the population data for the towns. And you'll also find a sheet that shows the population data for the counties. You may have heard in the news that there are a couple of counties where the representative numbers are going to change. You will find a blue sign-up sheet. I have a sign-up sheet here for people to sign up who want to speak. And if you have written information that you'd like to submit, we have somebody here to take it, and we will make sure that all members of the committee on both sides see it. And of course, remember, because we are recording, it's important to speak up. I, of course, remembered that after all the members at the table did not speak into the microphone because I forgot to tell them. So we have a setup for members of the public when they come. If you could come up to this table and speak, because the microphone will pick it up. We will be able to hear you not only in this room, but it will also be picked up for the recording, which will then be accessible to people online. And then finally, I have to say this personally, I know people are going on the sheet, ever gonna let me talk. You are in the old Merrimack County Courthouse. I was actually very sad when they built the new courthouse because this courthouse is one of the most beautiful in the state. I hope you've had an opportunity to look downstairs and even in the hall here at some of the woodwork. The benches that were in these courtrooms were truly beautiful. And to remind you that indeed it is New Hampshire, I probably haven't been in this courthouse as an attorney for over 15 years. And when I called about it, I said, is the elevator still the same? And they said, yes, you want to take the stairs. So here we are. I want to thank you all for coming, and without any further blabbering from the chair here, we'll get started. We're looking forward to hearing from you. And the first person I have, and I'm going to have a seat, is Mr. McDonald. Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and committee members. I'm Alan McDonald from the London. I zoomed into the last full House Redistricting Committee meeting and was greatly disappointed by the overall tone of the meeting. There was no statement of shared purpose in performing one of democracy's key tasks. I saw little sense of collegiality or bipartisanship. I heard no detailed, inclusive outline of process. I heard acknowledgement only of a math problem that needed to be solved devoid of values. I heard leadership dismissive of the need to have public hearings after the proposed maps are ready. That is probably the most important critical part of the process and should be done with Zoom capability. Because I witnessed a demonstration of the software, for which I'm very thankful, that obviously you'll be using, I see no reason why several Mac versions couldn't be made available for citizen scrutiny well in advance of November. When Governor Sununu vetoed a bipartisan commission to do this task, he assured us that the process would be completely transparent. As citizens of a democracy, we deserve nothing less. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Janet Ward. Come on down.
Good evening. I have a very brief message to share with you. Gerrymandering is a tool that has been used by political parties to ensure their success in elections. Simply put, it allows those drawing voting district lines to make their work favor their party's candidates, rather than drawing reasonable, logical lines that recognize communities of interest. They persuade themselves that their gerrymandering is bringing about a greater good. Journalist Sidney Harris had this to say about such mental gymnastics, and I quote, "Once we assuage our consciences by calling something a necessary evil, it begins to look more necessary and less evil," end of quotation. The fact is that gerrymandering is wrong, pure and simple. The duty of the special committee is fair and transparent redistricting. Please keep in mind that citizens across the state are closely watching the critical work of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you,
Madam
Ms. Ward.
Chair, may I ask a question of you?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Just so everybody knows, Representative Smith knows I don't always answer it, but you can certainly ask it. Thank you.
I am very honored to be here in Merrimack County tonight, and what I really hope that I will hear from the citizens of Merrimack County is suggestions from them about how town, city lines should be drawn in the House and the Senate as they affect Merrimack County. That is at least what I had hoped to hear from people, and rather than a more philosophical discussion about the importance of fair and transparent districting. Am I totally off base here?
Thank you, Representative Smith. We are all free to say what we want, and we all have our own expectations.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next person I have signed, I show is signed up to speak on this is Judith Ackerson. Did I get that right?
Excuse me, but I said I was not going to be speaking.
Oh, I'm sorry. That column was if you had something written.
Oh,
Okay,
so nothing.
all right. Nancy Marciana. Nancy, I'm sorry. How are you?
It's my husband's name. I'm Nancy Marascio from New London, and I'm going to read, and I have a very specific comment about New London, and I will add one about the Senate. Madam Chair and members of the special committee, as a resident of New London and as moderator for the town of Newbridge for 25 of my years living there, I have an active commitment to the value of each vote of qualified voters. Thank you for this opportunity to offer public comment on redistricting, which will determine how every New Hampshire vote will be valued for the next 10 years of our lives. In 2010, of 152 communities eligible for their own representative, 62 were not assigned there. Although New London had 4,397 residents in 2010, when the required number was 3,291, it was not assigned its own district or its own representative. Now in 2021, every community with a population of 3,444 or higher is constitutionally guaranteed its own district and representative. New London's population is 4,400. Model fair maps have been drawn to show this, that all but 10 qualified towns can, by the numbers, be assigned their district and exclusive state representative. I urge you to redistrict New London and other eligible towns so that they are assigned the representative they are legally due. Please also pay quality attention to Moterials, assuring more closeness and shared interests of their towns. As I drive to Plainfield each year to moderate for the League of Women Voters of New Hampshire, the candidate forum for the Moterial, which includes our neighbor Sunapee, the easiest route from New London, then Sunapee, is through Newport and Claremont. What does that say about the lack of even physical closeness in that Moterial district? Our senator is from Goffstown. Previously, in the 10 years before this time, it was the western area of the state which had a Senate district. And the senator knew more, had more advantage of being an insider in that area. So if I had a comment about the Senate, particularly in my area, I just think it's more useful for our senator to know more about the area that they come from. I know it's hard, but it was done before. I'm going to add 2 more points. When a leading Republican politician bragged in January that redistricting would assure a Republican U.S. representative in District 1, he reflected all that is unethical and partisan gerrymandering. You have the opportunity to do what you were elected to do. Serve the citizens of New Hampshire by assuring each voter that their vote counts equally. Thank you for this opportunity to urge nonpartisan decision-making by your committee so New Hampshire can be proud of 2021 redistricting. Submitted in the expectation that your results will value every vote equally. Nancy, I'll share with you.
Thank you. Did you want to submit that?
I'll submit a copy and I'll
Yeah.
send an email with,
Great, thank you.
thank you very much, committee members. Thank you.
Thank you. Next signed up to speak is former Senator Jean Beach. Come on up, please. Hi.
Well, thank you to my former colleagues. I am here to thank you for deciding to live stream this event. I think it's very important for the public to hear. According to Article 11 of the New Hampshire Constitution, every inhabitant of the state, 18 years of age and upwards, shall have an equal right to vote in any election. Now, some people interpret that sentence to only mean that every inhabitant of age may place their vote in a ballot box. But we all know that the weight of that vote can be enhanced or diminished by the actions of this committee. An equal right to vote depends upon this committee's diligence in dividing districts as fairly as possible. An equal right to vote means that a party with fewer than 3 in 10 voters as members does not dominate every legislative body, passing the most extreme budget in 50 years, containing policies that most of the people of New Hampshire strongly disagree with. An equal right to vote means that the desire of most people of New Hampshire to conserve energy, minimize fossil fuels, and set cleaner standards to help with climate change cannot be upheld in vetoes. An equal right to vote means that the support of most of the people of New Hampshire for educating children and young adults, rather than giving a fourth tax cut to businesses and cutting the interest and dividend tax for the wealthy, will result in politicians who support such actions being turned out on their noses. This committee has the responsibility to create districts that result in the will of the people being reflected in the actions of the legislature, executive council, and congressional districts. And I challenge you all to act with integrity and uphold your constitutional responsibility to redistrict fairly. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Next signed up to speak, I have Liz Tentarelli. Thank you, Madam Chair. Liz Tentarelli. I'm from Newbury, the westernmost town in our wonderful state of Merrimack County. Many people I've spoken with about redistricting voiced two concerns: that the process of drawing the maps be done with transparency and public input, so I'm glad we're doing this meeting, and that the criteria the committees will use be clearly stated. Therefore, there are some questions that I hope the committees will address publicly in the coming weeks. Obviously, you'll adhere to the federal and state constitutions about equal representation. But what has your committee decided will be an acceptable deviation from the ideal numbers for each of the 4 plans? When will you make that public? Nancy Marascio already talked about the towns that should have had their own reps. So I wonder, will your committee work to make that happen? And where does adhering to that constitutional requirement fall in your list of priorities? Communities of interest is a broad term, but many are wondering which communities of interest your committee believes are important considerations when determining which towns should be grouped together. Have you set those priorities, such as keeping regional school districts in the same Senate district, or grouping neighboring towns that share common problems, such as water quality issues or natural resources conservation or public health issues? If you have not yet prioritized those, when do you expect to set those priorities, and will you make them public on the committee's website? Merrimack County is currently divided among 6 Senate districts. The towns in our county range from my little town on the west to the cities of Concord and Franklin. Forming state Senate districts is about the numbers, of course, but what other demographic aspects will you be considering? Finally, I suggest that until draft maps are drawn and made available to the public, it is an exercise in abstraction to discuss what makes sense for any particular town or city. Therefore, I suggest another round of these county input sessions where your actual draft maps will be shown so that you can get specific comments from municipal officials and the public to be heard for your consideration. I want to thank you for holding this first round of listening sessions, for creating a website where this information will be available, and for your hard work on this important decennial project. And I will send email testimony, but I will give a copy to the clerk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on this, I have a Jenna Raby.
John Brady.
John Reed. Sorry about that.
No, that's quite all right.
Len is going to see how bad I butchered that. But
No, that's all right.
Yeah.
My name is pronounced time and time again. I got used to it.
Thank you.
Anyway, like Alan McDonald, Nancy, I'm to and from New London. I'm not going to repeat particulars of what other people have said. In fact, I'm going to try to keep this very straightforward and simple. My basic proposition is this: everybody deserves an even chance to vote and an even chance to have his or her voice heard. Now, everybody in this room knows that we live in an age of fierce partisan contention. Generally speaking, it's got rough. And in some unfortunate instances, it's got downright nasty. But we can stop that from happening. Representative Smith asked for suggestions, so I'm going to put one to you. This is my personal suggestion. I speak for nobody else in this room. But here goes. Create an independent commission to handle redistricting. As a legislature, you can authorize it. You retain your authority over redistricting thereby. At the same time, you ensure an impartial, transparent process which increases public trust in our elections. The alternative, in my view, is more wrangling, more roughness, more gerrymandering, more accusations of fraud. I could go on and on with the particulars. I'm sure you're aware of what people have said on the subject. We don't have to travel that road. We can stop that code right now. So here's what I have to say, just do it. Thank you.
I also have signed up to speak David Andrews.
Good evening. Is there any time limit on this? Because I think I could talk for a while, but
Well, let me tell you, Representative Wilhelm, can you grab a blue sheet and let me know how many other people, just for a show of hands, I'm trying to do it from a sheet, want to speak? I've got 1, 2, 3. There's 2 people in it. Ms. Zink and who else? It's probably the 2 people who will raise their hands, okay. I know, because I haven't met Mr. Andrews, but I've been to a video thing that he ran. So I know once he gets talking, we're gonna get going. So, you know, if somebody who wants to speak has to leave, let me know, Ms. Schultz or Ms. Zink, if you feel like you want to leave. Ms. McGoy.
Madam Chair, perhaps you would let the other people who have shorter speeches speak first, and then let him.
Do you want to do that?
I'm not gonna wait.
Yeah, I figured that. Just want to say to everybody in this room, I don't need to be rude if I seem very familiar with some people and not with you. This is my second go-round as chair of the election law. I've been on it on a number of years, and you have some very dedicated public individuals here who participate in the public process, and I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with them in rooms in the legislative office building. So it's certainly not out of any disrespect for you if I don't know you, and it's out of a lot of respect for the time that the people in this room have put into it. Ms. Schultz, are you okay waiting, or would you rather come up? Okay. All right, thank you. Senator Gray.
Madam Chair, speaking as, there are actually 2 committee hearings going on, or listening sessions going on at this time. Senate rules would say that you need not to repeat, not to do a whole bunch of things, okay? Try to keep it concise, etc. So, you know, if he does go on too long or about something, I on the Senate side will object and try to get someone else to continue.
I've never done a good cop, bad cop. This is gonna work.
I will try to be as concise as possible.
And just so, I had received word that someone else was going to be here was the director of Open Democracy gonna speak? Olivia?
Oh, that's me?
Well, what about Brian? Was Brian here? You weren't gonna speak?
Olivia is our director.
You're gonna have her speak? Okay, I just want to make sure we're covering everybody before I let Mr. Andrews.
And I'm not going.
Okay, all right. Welcome.
Hi, I'm David Andrews from Chichester. I work for the Redistricting DataHub.org, which is a nonpartisan organization that hosts redistricting data nationally. I also volunteer with Open Democracy, and I'm the lead mapper on the Mapathon project with Open Democracy and Mapathon Coalition. First off, I want to just kind of repeat a little bit what everyone else was saying, and to say that redistricting is the foundation of a democracy. And if we break that foundation with gerrymandering, it can seriously cripple our democracy, as we are seeing in the past 30 or 40 years. So first, to get into some of the maps. First, congressionally, I would ask that you try to keep the current congressional districts as they are pretty considered to be very fair. They have a very good, they have a lot of rural, and they both have a lot of urban, so they're very well put together. There is some changes that could be made to enhance those maps, but I would think that the cores of those maps should be kept together in that they're actually they're considered to be very good districts for both parties. Then moving on to the executive council, I feel that the executive council map should be drastically shifted from the current districts and District 3 in particular. We should first start with almost like a regional approach to the executive council, seeing as we have kind of specific regions in New Hampshire. We have the North Country, we have the Lakes region, we have Western New Hampshire, we have the Seacoast, we have Central New Hampshire, and then we have Southern New Hampshire. If we can break those, start with those different areas with our executive council maps, we can get a better representation of those areas. And then concerning all of the different maps, I would like to repeat that communities of interest are very important, and they should be preserved as much as possible. For instance, SAUs, public health regions, those should be kept together if possible. I know I've done a lot of mapping, and I know that the map is difficult in some areas, but it is possible to, you're not gonna have the perfect map, but you can strive for the perfect map. And so I guess then moving on to the Senate. The Senate map is, I would consider not a very good map in that it is there's a lot of different sprawling districts. I would ask the committee to keep, maybe when you're setting your criteria, to include compactness in those criteria for the Senate map specifically. And I think that that could help to kind of keep more communities of interest together if we include compactness as a criterion. And then for the House map, this is where the kind of core of my the speech is coming in. So I want to talk about the methodology in calculating the Moterial districts for the House. A little bit of history on it. In 2000, the House maps were drawn, and they were drawn using the aggregate method, which is kind of what everyone thinks of Moterial is. You kind of take two districts, and then there's a leftover population from those districts. You put them together, and you get a Moterial rep out of those leftover people, which is what is generally considered what everyone thinks of as Moterial reps. But in actuality, in 2002, the maps were challenged in court, and the Supreme Court ruled that the aggregate method was not a valid method in creating Moterials, because of the fact that you could say have two districts. One district had, say, 50 extra people, and one district had 3,350 extra people. And then you could create a Moterial out of that using the aggregate method. The Supreme Court ruled that that was unconstitutional based on the one person, one vote rule. And so that floterials should therefore consist of around the same amount of people. So for instance, if districts were 3,000 people, you should have about 1,500 from each district would comprise a floterial district, and therefore it would be in line with the one person, one vote rule. And so what they put forth is what is known as the component method, which is a kind of in-depth calculation that you can find on the website. And in that, what it does is it assigns the ideal population to the non-floterial districts, and then it takes the leftover population and then pretty much tries to make sure that those align given a certain deviation. I have come up with a different methodology slightly because the component method it really limits the amount of districts that can actually use a floterial. So for instance, Hudson and Pelham currently are in the same district. They could not be broken up into two different districts and with a floterial rep because they would not align with the component method currently. There's a number of other different instances where this is the case. And so given that in 2006, the New Hampshire Constitution was changed to give each town that has a sufficient population their own district, I think that it is worth looking into different methodologies in calculating floterials to allow for more towns to have their own representatives. What I've come up with is what I've called the alternative component method, which is pretty much the same thing as the component method, but what it does is it takes into account the deviations of the non-floterial reps. So for instance, I sent the House Committee a memo that kind of outlines this more clearly. It's a little difficult to explain without a whiteboard, but so for instance, if say we have a district, say the ideal population for House rep was 3,000 people. Say we have a district of 4,000 people and a district of 5,000 people. You would have, the component method would assign 3,000 people in one district a House rep, 3,000 people in the other district a House rep, and then there'd be 2,000 people left over in one district and 1,000 people left over in the other district. The component method calculates this and says that there's a difference of 1,000 people in that floterial district, and therefore it's not allowed. It's too much. It's too big of a difference to allow. But what it doesn't calculate is that there's a variation in those non-floterial districts. So, for instance, in the town that has in the district that has 4,000 people, you could assign you could assign 3,000 people plus or minus 5%. So there's still an extra deviation there. So what you could do is assign 2,850 people, and then it would provide 1,250 people to the floterial rep. And then with the district of 5,000 people, you could assign 3,150 people to the non-floterial rep, and they would give 1,850 people. And therefore, you're off by only 700 instead of 1,000. And that difference is actually close enough to allow for a floterial rep. And so what the alternate component method really does is it allows flexibility in the in the mapping of the House districts. For instance, I know Representative McGuire is in a floterial with Epsom, Pittsfield, and Allenstown. And with the current populations, the Allenstown, if that same district was kept together, the component method would not allow for Epsom and Pittsfield to have their own reps. So Pittsfield and Epsom would be kept together, and then Allenstown could have its own rep. But with the alternative component method, it gives it just a little bit of flexibility, And then that would allow for Pittsfield to have its own rep, Epsom to have its own rep, and Allenstown to have their own rep, and then they would have the same Moterial representative there. It really just is in keeping with the same spirit of the Supreme Court ruling, in that you can't have 3,000 people assigned from one and 50 from another, but it actually gives just a slight bit more flexibility. So for instance, the best possible house map that we could come up with for Merrimack had 6 violations for the current 2020 mapping. In 2010, there was 11 violations of towns that had a sufficient population that did not get their own rep. So with the alternative component method, you could actually get that down to 2. So instead of 6 violations as the best possible with the component method, you can get it down to 2. And those 2 are actually, one is the fault of my town, Chichester, and because it's surrounded by larger
I did
towns.
want to tell you, we might have heard about it. So.
So Chichester was surrounded by large towns, so we needed to combine with one of them, and in so we violate the Constitution in doing that. Luckily, Canterbury is also one, so we could combine those with Loudon, and that would only lead to 1 violation. The other violation, the other town that causes a violation is Dunbarton. So therefore, we could really eliminate all those other towns from so that they all have their own representation. And in keeping with the Constitution, and I believe it would keep in line with what the Supreme Court has ruled in 2002. I hope you will read the memo that we sent. It goes into it a little bit more detailed, but I just want to thank you guys for your time, and I hope this was a good match question.
Thank you. I will say, your explanation helped me with the memo that you sent. So everybody knows there was a discussion before the meeting about the submission of maps. There is supposed to be a link on the website for people to be able to upload maps. And it was pointed out to me it's not there, so I'll be communicating with staff who frankly put that website together for me. It was a lot of work for a very small staff, so I'm happy we got what we got. But we'll be working on that, so it would be an opportunity for you to do that.
Okay, and I would be more than happy to come before the entire committee and explain the alternative promotion method. That's something that you guys wish to take on.
Okay, great.
All right,
Thank you. Okay, Olivia Zane.
Good evening. My name is Olivia Zink, and I'm the Executive Director of Open Democracy, and I live in Franklin, which is in Merrimack County. I want to thank you for the transparency of tonight's listening session. And also, individuals deserve a chance after the maps are created to also give public comment, so I hope that that can be allowed. As we've talked about a little bit tonight, it's really important that the criteria is publicly available, so we know how you are going to select districts. Will county lines be followed in Senate maps? Will that be a priority? Will we follow the Constitution, the 2006 amendment, where towns with a large enough population stay together? What communities of interest will you select? School district would be one that I think is really important, and the Open Democracy Mapping Team has created with the Department of Education an overlay that you can overlay the school districts. And so there is a tool available to overlay school districts if you want to see which maps cross school districts. The other communities of interest, and oftentimes those are separated. So for one example, in the city of Franklin Ward 3 is connected with Northfield. They share a state representative. Northfield is large enough to have their own state rep under the Constitution. But Northfield shares a police station with Tilton. and Northfield can't be combined because they're in different counties. I get that for the house maps, but I think we need to sort of think about those districts. I do want to bring up another problem that I think is just a timing problem with the census delay this year, is the city of Franklin has to change our charter to change our ward lines. The population for 2020 is not an even population in the city of Franklin, so the 3 ward lines will need to be adjusted. Our elections are October, the first Tuesday of October. So this Tuesday, October 5th, there will not be a charter amendment on our ballot. So it won't happen until 2022, where a charter amendment is brought. I know that it's after this committee has done their work. So in instances like the city of Franklin, it would be really great if you could keep the city of Franklin together as much as possible. Right now, the city of Franklin, wards 1 and 2 are divided with Hill for 2 state reps, and Ward 3 and Northfield are 2 state reps, and then there's a larger Moterial, which is, we have a representative from Loudon that represents the Moterial district there. So as long as you can try to keep all 3 wards together, when the city does our work of changing the charter, the lines will not be thrown off too much, because right now your math is, Ward 3 is our largest ward in our city with the 2020 numbers. And the city of Franklin's charter has not been amended since 1995, because the last 2 redistricting, we haven't seen growth. And this time our wards do require changing. So that is another thing to look at, the process of how I know you have to do your work and meet a deadline, and city charters in some instances, in the instance of Franklin, will not be done before the work of this committee is done. So figuring out how you reconcile those differences, it would be good to reconcile those differences and get input from leaders in those communities on how the line should be drawn, knowing that the timing issue is a problem with the process. So I want to thank you again for this process. I do want to touch a little bit on the executive council line. I know the city of Franklin is the northern part of that executive council district. We've lost population in the northern section, so that's probably coming down, and we will not be in an executive council district that crosses the states in a dragon-shaped form. But I think as you look at the executive council maps, it would be really good to keep the criteria of compactness. And also, you can't get there from here in some of the cases, where towns, you have to drive out of a community several miles outside of a community to get somewhere. So you should also look at the major east-west highways that we have, because sometimes you just can't get from one town to another, even though they're next to each other. So those geographical differences should be looked at carefully in drawing those maps. I will talk about the congressional district maps that will be drawn. I do think that to have a population deviation of 4 from last time is remarkable, that you got a pretty equal population in those 2 districts. And so to keep as much equal population as possible, but to try not to split county lines. I think Camden is an example where it's the only community that's not in a county line in that district in the congressional maps. So it would be good to look at trying to keep the existing maps. I will say that the congressional maps are probably the only maps you should do that with. The other maps, trying to look at how the gerrymandering was done 10 years ago and say, oh, let's try to do something similar, without reconciling that the districts were skewed, maybe a flawed process. It might be better to sort of start from scratch in some of the instances where we know existing gerrymandering occurs, like executive council districts. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Chris Schultz. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't know you
Sorry, Representative, I just saw the name, I wasn't connected.
It's okay, Representative. So good to see everyone. Thank you for your time here in Merrimack County.
State rep representing, Ward 9 in Concord, or Merrimack 18. My district, Ward 9, is represented also by Representative Catherine Rogers, who sends her goodwill. We would also want me to say nothing I'm saying here represents her views. But she has a Moterial district that covers 3 wards on the eastern side of Concord. And I will get to why that's important in a second. I did want to say the main point that I've heard today from most people who've spoken.
Representative Schultz, apparently your voice is a little muffled.
Oh, because I'm wearing 2 masks.
Yes, probably.
Well, I'm sure you know Representative Rogers, who I'm here to support, has cancer. So I was kind of hoping to not expose myself. Is that better?
Yes, it is actually.
And Representative Knight, if you're listening, I apologize.
And you manage.
She will not like it that I mentioned her twice. Okay, so, the overarching thing that I've been hearing is a thing that, I do want to recognize, Representative Marjorie Smith had done a wonderful job on a bill that had bipartisan support. I think that going with a bipartisan or nonpartisan even commission, the way that she had and others had suggested, and the way that many speakers here today have suggested, it's just the right thing to do for the citizens. I happen to be a partisan Democrat, would love to gerrymander and have districts so we could have, Democratic leaning districts, more than Republican or independent ones. But I ask myself as a lawmaker, what's the best thing for Granite Staters? It isn't my partisan interest. It should be the interest of everyone. If it is controlled by people who represent Republicans and Democrats at a disproportionate level, that isn't helping the state. If you don't include voices that are independent, that is not in the best interest of the state. We have a high percentage of undeclared voters, and they deserve a voice. Decisions should not be made in a way, in my opinion, anything other than independent, fair, honest, ethical, moral, because you want to make sure, I hope, that everyone in the state has a voice, has a representative, has an executive counselor, has a member of Congress, a state senator, and all the other offices that they get to choose represent them fairly, not one party over another. Certainly not a two-party system. It should be independent and fair. To get more specific on some things that I see currently that are unfair, the easiest is the executive council districts. Everybody knows, I think, that the district that Concord is included in is the Dragon that goes from the seacoast and Dover through Concord to Keene. Just my own words, that is a shameful way, a gerrymandered way to district. And it was done to neutralize Democratic power. That is not the way we should be doing it because it's not in the interest of Granite State. And I will say I've learned to come around on this view thanks to Representative Smith's leadership on this. She has really risen above party and championed it in a way that I hope we can still follow despite the veto. I also want to say that I don't believe we should have materials. I think that state representative districts, as best as possible, should be only represented by one person. And the unevenness throughout the state as it currently exists hurts the people of the Granite State. My district, the district I represent, has about 4,400 people, pretty compact, a lot of renters, senior housing.
I love representing, it's the honor of my life to represent the voters there. A lot more affordable to run a race in my district. Compared to, say, Salem, where all of the seats are at large. Salem now has a population of 30,000 people. I realize that's not Merrimack County, but this was the one that came to mind. As I serve on the committee with some folks from Salem, and Salem reps are great. I'm friends with more than one. But it's really unfair to the people of Salem to not know who is their main representative. I mean, I guess it could be any of them, you know? I just don't think that that is the best interest, to have this level of meanness, where I have a nice little compact district with, 4,400 people. That's pretty affordable to run it. And then you compare it, and I don't feel this way, but I can see where someone might. The fact that my district is also represented by a Moterial means that with 3 times the voters, does this mean that that representative has more power than me? I would say Representative Rogers, of course, has more power than me for a number of very good reasons, but across the state, should we look at it that way? Shouldn't we think about what is in the best interest of voters to know that they are represented by a state representative, that all of the candidates have a fair system, an affordable system that isn't so arbitrary, it feels arbitrary, and so uneven in that way? I just really have a huge problem with it, and I don't think it's, like I said, the best interest of Granite's leaders. I believe that is everything I wanted to say. Let me make sure. Well, I just wanted to say the gentleman from New London who sounded like John Kerry, I apologize, I don't know his name. John? I just want to say, I agree with everything he said. So if you want to, ignore anything that I said and defer to him, I was very impressed with how he talked about the independence of independent redistricting. I was pretty moved by that. And that's it, unless anyone has any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for your time here in Merrimack.
Representative Schuler.
Sorry, our last names are much too similar. I'll be rather brief, I think. I want to put forward that I'm not looking for a divorce necessarily. My district is Pembroke, Chichester, and I love my constituents in Chichester and have many friends there. But that said, I think if you are going to join Pembroke with another town, I would suggest that perhaps it could be put back together with Allenstown. Historically, that was the district. We share a downtown area of Sunkirk with Allenstown. We share the same sewage processing system. We even share the same zip code. And as I said, for many years, that was the district. So I would ask that you perhaps consider that. Also looking at the executive council district, I would hope that you would consider changing the configuration of District 2 to encompass most of the bedroom communities to Concord, which Pembroke, Chichester, Allenstown, People Loudon, Canterbury, so forth, all have much more in common with Concord than, in my town's case, Manchester, which is the executive council district that we're currently in. The business districts in Concord is where most of us do our shopping, and it just seems like it would be more natural. And I was just putting a word, kind of the same idea for the senatorial district. We're currently in that district that stretches clear to Raymond and Stratford. Previously, we had been in the same senatorial district with Concord. And again, we have much more in common with Concord with Stratford or Raymond. the interests just are not the same. If it's not convenient to put us with Concord, then perhaps some alignment with Bo Dunbarton, something of that nature. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here tonight that would like to speak in regards to the redistricting process, be it justice to Merrimack County or the state? I'm not. I see a hand. Come on down. Does the jury box deliver a verdict at the end of the night? Who's been elected foreman back then?
Hello. I'm Victoria Brown. I live in Hopkinton, and I did not plan on speaking tonight, but I think it's worth it to end, unless somebody else has to speak, which is encouraged. I think it's important to end with a long view. I'm 36. I'm planning on living here my entire life, and history has its eyes on what you all are going to be doing over the next weeks. I want you to know that the generation of activists that is coming up, the millennials and the younger kids, really care. We're not jaded. We're not distracted by the internet. We are paying attention very closely, and whatever happens, please don't take a short view. Please take a long view, because there are people who are going to be living here not only 10 years from now, but 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. And what you do here will affect what happens decades from now. So please, please don't think about the next election. Think about 40, 50 years from now and what New Hampshire is going to look like. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senate rules don't allow the public to clap.
Order. All right, I'd like to thank all of you for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it. This was the first of our community input sessions. We have one scheduled next week in Stratford, one in Hillsborough at the end of the month. And if you check our website, you'll be able to see where they're occurring. And I don't obviously expect that you'll all be going to other counties, but our hope is that where the facility has it available for us to do without a number of things, that we will be trying to live stream them when it's possible. So you can look at the website if you're interested in seeing what happens at other community input sessions. Remember the website that you can go to provide input to us, and I'll be working to make sure that maps can get uploaded. And I'm actually happy to stick around a little bit, might want to chat a little bit about maps with people afterwards. I'd be happy to do so. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming.
Madam Chair, I have written testimony from 4 individuals that I'll put on the corner of the table unless you'd like me to distribute.
I'm taking it all and we'll distribute it when we, subsequently.
Yeah, we'll pass it down. We're collecting the written comments. So why don't we hand it to Representative Wilhelm, just so I know it doesn't get mixed with. Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Susie.
That's fine. Madam Chair, I just wanted to ask, I appreciate very much the live streaming, and certainly the facility can accommodate that. I wondered if efforts are being made to allow for people to testify remotely, either via Zoom or via web access.
That is not going to be happening at these meetings. It can't happen consistently. And right now, the policy of the House is we're not doing remote participation.
Thank you.
Senator Gray.
For the Senate side, we are setting up a email address that will get any input that is given to us via that email. I believe it's going to be senate.redistricting@leg.state.nh.us. And I'm not sure when it will be set up. I expect it to be in the next day or two. But
optimistically tomorrow morning, almost certainly by the end of the week.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Have a nice evening. Safe travels.
Thank you. Close.
Thank you.